I heartily welcome you, esteemed viewers and connoisseurs of historical facts. In the deepest annals of the history of the Second World War, this tragic and pivotal moment in the development of humanity, a truly amazing, extraordinary, and completely unique case has been recorded. The story of a single soldier whose fate is truly unique and has no analogs in military chronicles. This man managed to take direct, active participation in combat on the side of four completely different states. And what is particularly noteworthy and distinguishes his story from the general mass, these states were in a state of fierce, irreconcilable war with each other, being sworn enemies on the battlefields and embodying completely different political systems and ideologies. Moreover, this soldier was Korean by ethnic origin, which in itself is, without any doubt or exaggeration, an exceptional rarity and anomaly for that global war, where the main and bloodiest, brutal struggle unfolded on the vast and lengthy Eastern Front between the mighty Soviet Union, fighting for its existence, and Nazi Germany, striving for world domination and the establishment of a new world order. This unusual circumstance further enhances the uniqueness and unusualness of this story, making it even more striking, worthy of attention, and in-depth study. Eastern names, as is well known to everyone who has ever encountered the culture and languages of the peoples of Asia, are particularly complex, specific, and unusual for Europeans in their sound. They are also often extremely difficult to pronounce and write for people accustomed to European phonetics and grammatical rules. For this reason, in the vast and boundless internet, you can find several completely different spellings of our hero's name, each of which has the right to exist, reflecting various attempts to transcribe his name into Latin. Yang Qianzhong, Qianzhong, Qinzhong, as well as Yang Qinzhong. His photo in the uniform of the German Wehrmacht, depicting him as a private soldier of Nazi Germany, first appeared thanks to American paratroopers who landed in Normandy in 1944 with heavy fighting and great losses, opening the long-awaited Second Front against Nazi Germany and hastening its inevitable collapse. The caption accompanying that photograph, which swept the world media, read, "Captured Japanese in Nazi uniform," which was a clear reflection of the then lack of understanding and poor awareness of Americans on issues of ethnic and cultural diversity of the peoples of the world, as well as their inability to recognize representatives of different Asian peoples. However, later, after a thorough investigation based on interviewing eyewitnesses and studying documents, it turned out that this soldier was actually Korean and not Japanese, and we will use the most frequently encountered and established version of his name, Qianzhong, as the most common and known among historians and researchers, in our narrative to avoid confusion and inaccuracies. His difficult military career, full of unexpected twists and tragic events, according to most reliable historical sources and documents, began in 1938 in the ranks of the Japanese Guandong Army, which was stationed in the vast territories of Manchuria, which was occupied at that time, and part of the Republic of China. There were relatively few ethnic Japanese in this vast and strategically important region. They mainly constituted the officer corps, occupying command and leadership positions, while representatives of the local population, Chinese, Koreans, Uyghurs, Dzungars, and even Mongols, were recruited for the rank and file positions, requiring physical strength, stamina, and willingness to sacrifice. Such a specific composition of the troops was due to the policy of the Japanese command in the region, aimed at preserving Japanese lives and using the local population to achieve their aggressive goals. It was in the vast and endless expanses of Mongolia, in the area of the Khakin-Joel River, that Yang Qianzhong experienced his first baptism of fire, receiving an extremely traumatic and painful experience of real combat. Unfortunately, and to his misfortune, he was immediately very unlucky, because on the banks of this river he had to face units of the Soviet Red Army, which gave a harsh and crushing rebuff to the Japanese aggressors, demonstrating the strength and power of Soviet weapons. After this unsuccessful, tragic, and sad combat experience, which was a real shock for him. He was taken prisoner and fell into the hands of Russian soldiers. And his military career in the Japanese army tragically and unexpectedly ended there, putting an end to his service in the Imperial Army. He had to spend several long and hard years full of hardship and suffering in the harsh and inhospitable conditions of Siberian prisoner of war camps, where existence, as you well understand, was far from comfortable, and the conditions of detention were extremely severe, debilitating, and inhumane. I ask you not to forget to subscribe to my channel if this unusual story has interested you, and to give a like if you liked it, so that in the future you can learn many more interesting, informative, and fascinating stories about World War II, as well as hear the opinions, testimonies, and points of view of all the sides involved in it, both victors and vanquished, about certain dramatic, tragic, and pivotal events of those distant and unforgettable years. Then the Great Patriotic War began, which became a real national tragedy and the greatest test for the peoples of the Soviet Union. In the first tragic and difficult years of which millions of Red Army soldiers were captured by the Germans, which became a real catastrophe and a heavy blow for the Red Army, bleeding its ranks and leaving it without experienced and battle-hardened soldiers. In such a difficult and critical situation, when the situation on the fronts was extremely difficult and tense, the People's Commissariat of Defense, in search of a way out of the stalemate, made a crucial and fateful decision to call up into the Red Army, Workers' and Peasants' Red Army, persons who had been convicted of relatively minor offenses and who could be used at the front as private soldiers, throwing them into the thick of combat. Among them, to the surprise of many and against common sense, was Young, who, after a thorough and, as it turned out later, superficial check, was considered, by all the signs and documents they had, as forcibly mobilized into the Japanese army and therefore in need of rehabilitation and atonement for his guilt before the Soviet state on the battlefields. In 1942, the Korean, who had no military experience, was sent to fight near Kharkiv, where fierce and bloody battles were taking place at that time. But already in 1943, after another defeat of the Red Army, he was captured by German troops, which was another unexpected turn of fate for him that changed his life forever, showing an amazing, if not to say astonishing, ability to change on the go. And without any moral torment, he without much hesitation and deliberation joined the Wehrmacht and changed his Soviet military uniform to a German military uniform, thus becoming a soldier of Nazi Germany, filling the ranks of the Nazi army. His new place of service was located on the strategically important and fortified Cotentin Peninsula, in northern France, in Normandy, where the Germans were awaiting the landing of Allied troops, preparing to give them a decisive rebuff. And this is despite the undeniable fact that his appearance, to put it mildly, did not at all correspond to the ideal anthropological parameters of a 2-meter-tall, blue-eyed blonde, which Nazi propaganda so actively and intrusively promoted, forming the image of a true Aryan soldier who was supposed to conquer the whole world. Then followed a large-scale, carefully planned, and well-prepared landing of Allied troops, which was carried out not only by American troops, but also by Canadian and Australian units, in Normandy, marking the beginning of the end of Nazi Germany and a harbinger of its inevitable collapse and defeat. Among other things, the landing also took place on the infamous Utah Beach, which was located in the immediate vicinity of the Cotentin Peninsula, where our protagonist was serving, and poor and unfortunate Kyung-jong, as if by a cruel irony of fate, once again for the third time, found himself in captivity. This time he was captured by servicemen of the armed forces of the United States of America, becoming a victim of another twist in his fate. The American military, as it turned out, was so incompetent and completely lacked any idea of the diversity of ethnicities, cultures, and peoples of the world that they could not even determine the nationality of the prisoner without understanding whether they were dealing with a Japanese, Korean, Chinese, or someone else. It is not surprising that under his photo, which immediately went around all American newspapers and became a sensation, the ridiculous, erroneous, and misleading inscription captured Japanese and German uniform flaunted, which became a clear and sad testimony to their incompetence. His name was also recorded in a typical Anglo-Saxon manner, greatly simplifying and distorting it beyond recognition. Yin Kin John. After that, another transformation, which had already become familiar to him, occurred in the difficult, eventful, and winding fate of our hero, which led him to a completely new life and opened up new horizons for him. The fact is that to obtain the coveted American citizenship, which attracted many people from all over the world, there were several different ways and paths, including military service in the ranks of the armed forces of the United States at the end of World War II, when it was already coming to its logical conclusion. This very enterprising, cunning, resourceful, and adaptable Asian, without wasting time, took advantage of this opportunity and went to serve in the American Army. And already in 1947, he became a full and legitimate citizen of the United States of America, receiving the coveted American passport and the opportunity to start his life from scratch, forever forgetting about the horrors of war and the deprivations he had to endure. After that, the former soldier and citizen of four completely different states settled in the prosperous and flourishing state of Illinois, started his own family, became a happy father of a wonderful daughter and two sons, and died at a ripe old age only in 1992, having lived a long and eventful life. Here is a completely incredible, unique, fascinating, and certainly instructive story that happened to this unusual man, who by the will of unpredictable fate and tragic circumstances found himself in the very epicenter of the most brutal events of the 20th century, becoming an involuntary witness and participant in many historical turns and cataclysms. Goodbye, dear viewers. I was glad to see you on my channel. Don't forget to leave your detailed and meaningful comments. Give likes if you like this unusual and instructive story, and be sure to subscribe to my channel so as not to miss new, interesting, informative, and exciting stories that will definitely surprise you, delight you, make you think about important issues of history, and maybe change your perception of the world.